Imagine being locked in a room with no one to talk to, no one to share your thoughts with, no voice, no touch, no laughter, nothing. Just silence. At first, you think you can handle it. You convince yourself that strength is isolation. But then something starts to shift. Your brain begins to work against you. Loneliness isn't just an emotion. It's a biological signal, a warning light. And when we ignore it, it doesn't just change how we feel, it literally rewires the brain. Today, I want to show you exactly what happens inside your mind when you strip away connection and why human interaction is not just important, it's survival. When you strip away all the noise, all the business of life, and you're left with nothing but silence, you begin to discover something profound about the human mind. The brain is not built to thrive in isolation. It is wired, deeply, biologically, for connection. And this isn't just some poetic idea, it's survival. Just like oxygen fills your lungs and water nourishes your body, human connection feeds your brain. Without it, your entire system starts to rebel. Think about it, every breakthrough moment you've had in life was fueled by connection. Maybe it was a conversation that gave you clarity. Maybe it was someone who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. Maybe it was the energy of a group, a team, a family that pulled you to a higher standard. The brain thrives in those environments. When you take them away, when you cut yourself off from others, the brain doesn't just feel lonely. It actually begins to interpret that loneliness as danger. And when the brain senses danger, it floods your body with stress hormones. Cortisol levels rise, and suddenly your ability to focus begins to shrink. Your memory weakens. You find yourself distracted, unmotivated, unable to sustain momentum. You don't need someone screaming at you or a traumatic event to feel that way. Just isolation itself flips the switch. Because to your brain, disconnection is a threat to survival. For most of human history, being alone meant being vulnerable. Being cut off from your tribe meant you could be hunted, starve, or lose protection. That wiring hasn't disappeared. It's still inside you right now, shaping the way you respond when you're isolated. What's wild is that the brain doesn't differentiate much between physical pain and emotional pain. When you're cut off from others, the same neural circuits that light up when you burn your hand or cut your finger are activated. Loneliness literally hurts. You don't just feel low. You feel wounded, even if there's no visible injury. And when that pain lingers, when connection isn't restored, the brain adapts in unhealthy ways. It becomes hyper-vigilant, always scanning for threats. It begins to interpret the world as colder, harsher, more hostile. This is why people who feel deeply isolated often describe the world in terms of fear, suspicion, or numbness. Their brains are rewiring themselves to survive without connection, but in the process, they lose the very thing that gives life richness. Think about it: joy, meaning, purpose. None of these come from sitting alone in a room. They come from sharing experiences. They come from telling stories, laughing with others, crying with others, celebrating victories, and enduring struggles together. Without that, the brain doesn't just get bored, it withers. Now, here's the catch: some people convince themselves they don't need connection. They wear isolation like a badge of honor. I don't need anyone. But that's not strength, that's self-deception. Because no matter how much you try to armor yourself, your brain is still designed to seek belonging. The longer you deny that, the more it costs you, mentally, emotionally, even physically. Studies show prolonged isolation increases risk of heart disease, weakens the immune system, and shortens lifespan. That's not coincidence. That's biology screaming for connection. And you can feel it in the little things. You wake up groggy, unmotivated. You struggle to remember simple tasks. You start a project but can't seem to finish. That's not laziness. That's not lack of discipline. That's the brain under stress because it's missing the oxygen of connection. When you surround yourself with others who challenge you, encourage you, love you, your brain lights up. Dopamine flows. Serotonin stabilizes. Stress drops. You literally become sharper, faster, stronger. So the question becomes, are you starving your brain of the very thing it needs to thrive? Or are you feeding it the connection that fuels its growth? Because the truth is, you don't just survive through connection. You come alive through it. And when you understand that, when you stop treating connection as optional and start seeing it as essential, you stop playing small. You begin to build environments, relationships, and communities that don't just make you feel good. They make your brain function at its highest level. That's why connection isn't just a nice to have. It's oxygen for the mind. When you cut yourself off from the world long enough, something fascinating and dangerous happens. You stop seeing reality for what it is. The brain, without the balance of social interaction, begins to create its own distorted version of truth. It's like looking into a mirror that's been cracked. The reflection is still there, but it's fragmented, twisted, unreliable. Isolation magnifies every fear, every doubt, every small worry until it feels 10 times heavier than it really is. You see, when we're connected to others, we calibrate our perspective. We share ideas, we hear different points of view, we laugh off our insecurities because someone else helps us see they're not so big. But when that connection disappears, the brain has no external feedback. It begins to echo its own thoughts, looping them over and over until they feel absolute. A small setback starts to feel like total failure. A single rejection becomes a prophecy of lifelong loneliness. A moment of fear transforms into the belief that the whole world is dangerous. The brain is not trying to deceive you. It's trying to protect you. But without connection, it has no compass, so it leans into caution, and caution turns into paranoia. Think about people who spend extended time in solitary environments. They report hearing noises that aren't there, feeling watched when no one is around, doubting their own senses. Why? Because the brain is starving for input. It craves stimulation, correction, context. And when it doesn't get it, it fills in the blanks with whatever it can, often magnifying the negative. It's like a survival instinct gone haywire. The brain decides it's safer to assume the worst than to risk being wrong. But in doing so, it robs you of clarity, it robs you of truth. And here's the real cost. You don't just lose perspective on the outside world, you lose perspective on yourself. You begin to question your worth. Without voices around you to reflect your strengths, your achievements, your potential, you start to see only your flaws. Self-doubt becomes your constant companion. That inner critic grows louder, unchallenged, because no one is there to remind you of your value. You don't just feel alone, you start believing you're not enough. And once that belief takes root, it colors everything you experience. But here's the paradox: the longer you're isolated, the harder it becomes to trust connection again. The brain, living in its distorted reality, convinces you that people won't understand you, won't accept you, maybe even that they'll hurt you. So instead of reaching for the very thing that would heal the distortion, you pull back further, reinforcing the cycle. It's like being lost in a maze and deciding the best way out is to close your eyes. You're protecting yourself from imagined dangers, but in reality, you're trapping yourself even deeper. And yet, when you reintroduce even a small amount of genuine connection, everything begins to shift. A simple conversation, an honest laugh, a moment of being heard. It's like wiping away the fog. Suddenly, the problems that felt overwhelming shrink down to their actual size. The fears that seemed paralyzing begin to loosen their grip. Because the brain finally has context. It finally has balance. It finally has something to anchor itself to outside of its own looping fears. This is why the people you spend time with are not just influences. They are lifelines. They are the reality check your brain needs to stay grounded. They keep you from magnifying shadows into monsters. They remind you that you're not broken, you're not alone, you're not powerless. Without that, you drift further and further into a distorted reality where every challenge feels insurmountable. So if you've ever wondered why life feels heavier when you've been isolated, why your thoughts spiral more quickly, why your fears feel sharper, it's not weakness, it's biology. Your brain is doing what it's designed to do in the absence of connection, protect you at all costs, even if it means distorting reality. But the moment you choose to step back into connection, you reclaim the truth, you reclaim perspective, and you reclaim yourself. Because when you lose connection, you don't just lose others, you lose clarity. One of the most powerful things connection gives us is balance. When we're with others, our emotions don't just live inside of us. They're shared, expressed, diffused, transformed. You've experienced this. You've had moments when you were carrying something heavy, maybe a frustration, maybe a fear, and you finally told someone about it. And what happened? Instantly, it didn't feel as suffocating. The situation might not have changed, but the weight you carried did. That's because human connection acts like a regulator for emotion. It stabilizes the storm inside your brain. Without that, the storm has no outlet, no anchor, and it grows louder and more destructive. The brain is wired to respond to social cues. When someone smiles at you, your brain releases oxytocin. It calms your nervous system. When someone listens to you, your brain produces serotonin. You feel steadier. When someone shares laughter with you, dopamine fires and your mood lifts. These chemicals aren't just feel-good rewards. They're regulators. They help you manage stress, fear, and sadness. But when you strip away connection, those regulating moments disappear. The brain loses its balance, and instead of releasing chemicals that soothe, it floods the system with cortisol and adrenaline. Suddenly, anxiety feels sharper, sadness feels deeper, and anger feels harder to control. And this doesn't just affect your emotions. It affects the way you show up in life. When you can't regulate your feelings, you become reactive instead of intentional. Small frustrations feel like massive obstacles. A single mistake feels catastrophic. You find yourself snapping at people you love, withdrawing from opportunities, or spiraling into overthinking. It's not that you've become weaker. It's that your brain is operating without its natural stabilizers. Connection is what helps you reset, regain perspective, and return to a state where you can respond instead of just react. The danger of isolation is that it pushes you deeper into survival mode. The brain is constantly scanning for threats, and without the soothing power of connection, everything feels like a potential danger. You may start to feel like you're walking on edge all the time, unable to relax, unable to feel safe. Over time, this constant emotional strain chips away at your resilience. What used to be manageable begins to feel overwhelming. What used to inspire you begins to feel impossible. And soon, you don't just feel disconnected from others, you feel disconnected from yourself. But think about how different it feels when you have someone to lean on, when you can talk through your worries, laugh about your mistakes, or cry in the safety of another's presence. Suddenly emotions don't consume you. They move through you. Connection doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it helps you process it in a way that strengthens you rather than breaks you. It gives your brain a chance to reset, to let go of tension, to find balance again. And here's the truth: no matter how independent or strong you think you are, you cannot out-muscle biology. You cannot override the fact that your brain is wired to regulate itself through others. That doesn't make you weak, that makes you human. The strongest people are not the ones who never lean on anyone. They're the ones who understand that strength is multiplied through connection. They use the power of others not as a crutch, but as fuel. So when you cut yourself off, when you convince yourself you don't need anyone, what you're really doing is cutting off your access to one of the most powerful emotional tools you have. You're denying your brain its natural way of finding balance. And the longer you do that, the more unstable your emotions become, the more difficult it is to rise above challenges, the more exhausting life begins to feel. But when you reconnect, when you open up, when you allow yourself to be seen and supported, you don't just lighten your load, you strengthen your foundation. You give your brain the resources it needs to stay steady, to stay resilient, to stay alive to possibility instead of crushed by pressure. Because at the end of the day, connection doesn't just make you feel better, it makes you stronger. When you take away meaningful social interaction for long enough, something begins to happen that most people don't even realize. It's not just your mood that suffers, it's your brain's ability to think, remember, and create. Connection isn't only emotional fuel, it's mental exercise. Every conversation you have, every debate, every story shared, every laugh exchanged, those are workouts for your brain. They keep it sharp, engaged, firing on all cylinders. Without them, the mind begins to slow down, it loses its edge. It weakens the same way muscles atrophy when you stop moving your body. Think about it. When you're talking with someone, your brain is multitasking at a remarkable level. You're listening, interpreting tone, reading facial expressions, recalling past experiences, and formulating responses, all within seconds. That's cognitive training in action. It's keeping your memory active, your problem solving alive, your ability to connect dots sharp. Now, imagine stripping that away. No conversations, no feedback, no stimulation. The brain becomes underoozed, and an underoozed brain begins to decline. Research shows that people who spend extended time in isolation experience faster memory loss and slower cognitive function. They struggle more with focus, they forget details more easily, they find it harder to process new information. And it makes sense, because the brain is like any other organ. It thrives when it's challenged, when it's exercised, when it's engaged. Remove those challenges and its performance decreases. But it's more than just memory. Creativity takes a hit too. Some of the most innovative breakthroughs in history didn't come from people sitting alone in a dark room. They came from collaboration, from bouncing ideas back and forth, from combining perspectives. Connection sparks imagination. It forces the brain to expand beyond its own limited patterns. Alone, your thoughts run in circles. With others, your mind stretches into places it never would have reached by itself. Isolation kills that spark. It narrows your thinking, reduces your curiosity, and leaves you trapped in repetitive thought loops. And here's the dangerous part: most people don't notice it happening right away. It's subtle. At first, it's just a little more forgetfulness here, a little less energy to solve problems there. But over time, those small declines stack up. Suddenly, you realize you can't recall information as quickly, you struggle to adapt, and your confidence begins to erode. You start believing you're not as capable, not as smart, not as driven. But the truth is, it's not you. It's isolation. It's the brain starving for stimulation. The brain is designed to be social not just for emotional reasons, but because connection keeps it alive, agile, and adaptable. It's wired to learn from others, to grow through interaction. Every time you're engaged in conversation, your neurons are firing, your synapses are strengthening, your mental muscles are growing. That's why people who stay socially active, even as they age, often maintain sharper minds. They've kept their brains in motion. They've kept themselves plugged into the very fuel that keeps cognitive decline at bay. So if you've ever felt foggy after too much time alone, if you've struggled to focus or found your creativity fading, it's not a flaw in you. It's your brain signaling that it's missing its natural stimulus. It's missing the challenge, the engagement, the spark that only comes from other human beings. And the moment you step back into that space, when you share ideas, when you laugh, when you listen deeply, you'll feel the difference. Your mind wakes up. Your focus sharpens. Your energy rises. Because connection doesn't just heal emotions. It keeps your brain alive. What's incredible about the human brain is that as much as it suffers without connection, it also has the extraordinary ability to heal and rebuild the moment you step back into it. Connection is not just a luxury, it's medicine. It's the reset button the brain has been waiting for. Think about the last time you were really present with someone. You laughed until your stomach hurt. You shared a story that mattered, or you felt someone truly listening to you. Didn't it feel like a weight lifted? That wasn't just an emotional moment. That was your brain releasing dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. It was your nervous system calming down, your stress levels dropping, your mind rewiring itself to feel safe again. We forget sometimes how powerful the simplest interactions can be. A hug, a handshake, eye contact, even just sitting in silence with someone you trust. All of these send powerful signals to the brain. They tell it, you're not alone. You're safe. You're part of something bigger. And that sense of belonging literally transforms your physiology. Your immune system strengthens, your heart rate steadies, your ability to think clearly returns. You feel energy where there was exhaustion, hope where there was despair. This is not magic. It's biology working the way it's designed to work. The beautiful thing is, you don't need 1,000 friends or constant attention to create this healing. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room or surround yourself with crowds every day. What your brain craves is genuine connection. One meaningful relationship, one authentic conversation, one space where you can show up without the mask. That's enough to trigger the brain's healing response. Because the brain doesn't measure connection by numbers, it measures it by depth. And when that depth is there, resilience grows. Suddenly the challenges that felt impossible don't seem so overwhelming. The fears that were paralyzing shrink in size. You bounce back faster, not because life got easier, but because your brain is no longer fighting the battle alone. It has the resources of connection fueling it, lifting it, stabilizing it. This is why people who have strong social bonds are not just happier. They're healthier, they live longer, they recover from stress and trauma more quickly. Connection literally builds resilience into your nervous system. I want you to really let that sink in. The conversations you have, the bonds you form, the communities you nurture, these aren't just nice extras in life. They are the foundation for mental strength, for clarity, for growth. When you connect with others, you're not just feeding your heart, you're rewiring your brain to thrive. You're activating the circuits that make you adaptable, creative, courageous. And the more you invest in that, the more unstoppable you become. But here's the key, you have to choose it. You have to be intentional about it. Because the world we live in today makes it easy to slip into surface-level interactions, scrolling through feeds, liking posts, mistaking digital contact for genuine connection. And while technology can be a bridge, it can't replace the power of real presence. Your brain knows the difference. It knows when someone is fully with you, listening, engaging, caring. That's what lights up the healing circuits. That's what gives you the energy to rise. So if you've been feeling disconnected, if you've been running on empty, the answer isn't always to work harder, to push more, to grind through. Sometimes the answer is to pause, to reach out, to sit with someone who reminds you of who you are. Because in that moment, your brain begins to repair itself. The fog begins to clear. The spark comes back. And you remember that you're not meant to do this alone. Because connection is not optional. It's the fuel that brings your brain back to life. So when you step back and look at it all together, it becomes clear. Your brain is not designed to live in isolation. Without connection, it starves. It loses perspective. It struggles to regulate emotions. It begins to decline, and it convinces you that the world is darker than it really is. But the moment you choose connection, everything shifts. Your brain comes alive. Your emotions find balance. Your focus sharpens. Your resilience grows. You stop surviving and start thriving. Life is not meant to be lived behind walls. It's meant to be shared, to be experienced, to be built together. And the truth is, the greatest gift you can give your brain, your body, and your soul is the courage to reach out, to connect, to let others in. Because when you do, you don't just heal, you come fully alive.